Hello, fifth graders. So we're going to talk about topic 1.5 today, and it's all about comparing decimals. So the past few days, we've been talking a lot about decimals, their place values, okay? We're also talking about equivalent decimals, and now we're going to compare decimals, all right? So there are three symbols we use to compare decimals. The first symbol is the greater than symbol. And that symbol looks like that, okay? So basically that tells us that whatever is on this side is greater than that side. So we have the greater than symbol, and the opposite of the greater than symbol is the less than symbol, okay? Which looks the opposite, like that, okay? And the last way we compare decimals is the equal to symbol, okay? And that is just an equal sign. And then we also have one more, which isn't listed on here, but it's this symbol, like that. And that basically means if there's a slash through the equal sign, it means they are not equal. So let's look at our question of the day. It says, just because a decimal has more decimal places, does it always mean that it is greater? So for example, if this, what I mean by decimal places is like this. If we have this decimal has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decimal places, okay? But this decimal has 1 decimal place. So does that mean if this decimal has 5 decimal places, does that mean that it's greater than that decimal? And that's what our question's going to be today. All right, so we're going to see if that's true or not. So to compare, step 1, you're going to stack up the decimals you are comparing so the decimal points are on top of one another. Then you're going to start at the left and compare digits of the same value. So for example, okay, stacking up the decimals, let's say I wanted you to compare 4 and 2800ths, 4 and 128 thousandths, and 4 and 27 hundredths. And I wanted you to say, oh, I did a comma instead of that. I wanted you to say, list them from least to greatest. So the first step, it says, is to stack up the decimals you are comparing so the decimal points are on top of each other. So I'm going to put this here. I'll do 4 and 128, and then I'll do 4 and 27. So the first step, just like I said here, is to stack them. So I can draw a straight line through the decimal points. And then you're going to start at the left and compare the digits one by one. So in the ones place, they're all 4s. So as of now, they're all equivalent. And then says step 2, it says find the first place where the digits are different. So let's go. So we have the 4, they're all the same. The tenths place, the first decimal place value, we have a 2, a 1, and a 2. Okay, so this is the first place value where they're different. This is 1/10 and this is 2/10. So what's less, 1/10 or 2/10? 1/10 is less. So this decimal place, this decimal number, 4 and 128 thousandths, is the least decimal. So we can write that as the least decimal. Okay, so we can not even look at that anymore. Now we want to compare the other two. So I'm going to list those on top of each other to see. And again, it's easy to see when they're on top of each other to compare place values. So the 4s are the same. The 2/10 are the same. And then we have 800ths and 700ths. So what's greater, 800ths or 700ths? Well, 800ths is greater. So that means that this whole decimal, 4 and 28 hundredths is greater than 4 and 27 hundredths. So the least is this, then we have 4 and 27 hundredths, then we have 4 and 28 hundredths. And step 3, we kind of already did that. It says compare the values that are different in order to see which decimal is greater or less. So the biggest thing I would suggest is lining them up and comparing them by place value. So let's look at some examples. So we're going to go through the steps again. It says list the numbers, this number, and this number from greatest to least. So the first step is to stack up the decimals you are comparing. So the decimal points are on top of one another. So we have the first number right here. I'll write it here. 5 and 631 thousandths. Then we have the next number, which is 5 and 625 thousandths. And the last number, we have 5 and 540 thousandths. And now we're going to start comparing. So find the first place where the digits are different. These 5s are all in the ones place. They're all the same. In the tenths place, we have 6, but then we have 5. So this is the first place value where they're somewhat different. All right, so let's look. If we're going from greatest to least, well, right now I'm going to find which one is least. Okay, so how we're comparing this, we're saying this is 5. Well, I know that 5 is less than 6. So wouldn't that make sense that 5 tenths right here is also less than 6 tenths, which are these two up here, okay? We know whole numbers that 5 is less than 6, so it would make sense that 5 tenths is less than 6 tenths, okay? So this number right here is the lowest number. So I'm going to write that because it's greatest to least. I'm going to write that over here on this side. So it will be 5 and 540 thousandths. So it's the least. Step 3, we keep comparing. I'm going to erase my marks here. All right, so we had a 6, and a 5. So now we're just comparing these two decimals. So these are the same. These 6s are both 6 tenths. Now we have the last one in the hundredths. We have 3 hundredths and we have 2 hundredths. Well, again, if we're talking about whole numbers, wouldn't you agree that 3 is greater than 2? So wouldn't 3 tenths or 3 hundredths, I'm sorry, not 3 tenths, this is in the hundredths spot. Wouldn't 3 hundredths be greater than 2 hundredths? So again, 3 is greater than 2, so 3 hundredths is greater than 2 hundredths. So that would mean that this decimal, 5 and 631 hundredths, is the greatest. And then this decimal in the middle, 5 and 625 thousandths, is the middle. All right, so it goes from greatest, 5 and 631 thousandths, middle, 5 and 625 thousandths, to least, 5 and 540 thousandths. So the biggest takeaway I would do from this is to make sure you line up those decimals. It's really easy to compare when they are stacked like this. All right, so if you need to make yourself boxes or you want to make sure that they're lined up, you want to be able to draw a line straight down the middle of those decimals and just compare. And also, another thing to remember, Make sure you're reading it correctly and it's greatest to least. Don't line them up least to greatest because then you'll get the question wrong. All right? So attached to this Ed puzzle is a Google form to get some more practice with comparing decimals. All right? So complete that. If you do have any questions, please let me know. All right? Have a wonderful